Hey guys, guess what? We are excited to announce that our podcast is now brought to you by our friends at veteran owned and operated Artillery Sports. The Artillery Sports 5-star series golf balls and bamboo golf tees have arrived just in time for summer. With each purchase, 20% of the profits are donated to organizations that help military veterans get low or no cost healthcare. So head on over to artillerysports.com today and use the code DOCFIRST for 10% off your next order. Welcome to Documentary First, an inside look at documentary filmmaking. I'm your host, Christian Taylor, a documentary filmmaker myself. My co-host, Jason Rugg, is out again this week, but he does assure me he'll be back very soon with some interesting news of his own career. We miss you, Jason. We can't wait to see you when you come back. This week, we have somebody really exciting with joining us, and I just can't wait for you guys to get to know him. His name is Josh Haygood. He's been in this industry for a really long time. He has some incredible insights to share with us, and I'm just thrilled because he reached out to us after learning about our podcast to say, I have some insights to share after all of my years in the industry, and he loves teaching and passing on his knowledge. So, Josh, we are so incredibly happy to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I want to read your bio real quick. It's super impressive. So just indulge me for a second. All right, everybody. Josh is an award-winning film and television producer. He began his career as a photographer for the United Nations, capturing UNESCO World Heritage sites across the globe. Transitioning to MTV News and Docs Department, he produced the Emmy Award-winning series True Life, pioneering HD and tapeless production methods. Boy, you've really seen a lot of changes in the industry for sure. With background work and DP work, he progressed to executive producing, showcasing his versatility in production roles. Post MTV, he co-created the Emmy-winning series A Day's Work for City of New York Public Television and executive produced the acclaimed documentary Ride with Larry, amplifying awareness for Parkinson's research. Beyond broadcast media, he advises startups on media creation strategies and is currently crafting a film spotlighting an innovative boat propeller, which we're going to talk about today, championing its potential to revolutionize the world, which I've looked into it a little bit, and it is just incredibly important in my opinion. So I can't wait to hear more about that. Josh, you have an incredible history. I mean, you started as a photographer. I mean, tell me a little bit about that. How did that
Yeah.
all begin?
Yeah, I did actually. I grew up, my dad was a photographer in Vietnam. So I sort of grew up hearing these great stories of sort of storytelling under fire, I guess. And that really got me very interested. Um, and I always used to look at the National Geographic when I grew up.
Hmm.
And the thing that fascinated me as a kid is there's no sound. It's not moving, it's a still image, but that the photographer could tell a whole story in one still image. You got the context, you got the emotion, you really brought you into that moment in such a way. That just felt like a superpower to me. I can sit here and describe at length some experience I had, and you might get the idea. But to be able to capture it in one still frame, to me, was really mastering sort of that type of very short storytelling. And I think I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. So I got the chance. I went to art school. I went to Art Center in Pasadena, which I loved. Art Center is a very technical, commercial type school to prepare you for the commercial world, which is great. But I sort of knew before I was ready to sort of go commercial and that type of thing. I really wanted to just be a storyteller and do something kind of adventurous. And I didn't quite know how that was going to come together until I met a group that worked with the UN. And the
Hmm.
UN said, we need kind of a young guy that doesn't have a lot of ties and can just disappear into the world for months at a time. And I said, great, where do I sign? And they sent me right off to Jordan and Gaza and Israel, which is, a very different kind of place for sure. And that was quite an introduction to the world. And I got to go to Cuba. And this is Cuba in the 90s when you really couldn't go to Cuba. And I sort of had, special permission. So that was amazing. But I think it really lit that fire of really wanting to tell real stories And that just when I sort of moved into a more of a commercial environment, I still wanted to tell real people stories. And ultimately getting into MTV, there's a lot of celebrity and that kind of thing there, which is great. But I really wanted to focus on sort of telling real people stories, and that's what I did there for almost 12 years.
Yeah, so tell me though how you made that transition from still
Yeah.
photography into, I don't know, can't principal photography with a movie camera, and I mean it's a different medium for sure. And I mean, did you have to go back to school, or tell me how that transition
Yeah,
happened?
that's a good question, actually. In school, in art centers are very technical schools. So you really learn, and especially then, we're shooting film. We're not only shooting film, we're in the darkroom developing our own film and printing on paper, old
Do
school.
you think they're still doing that now?
I doubt it. And I don't know. I doubt it. Look, it's a beautiful craft, sort of, and it's something very cool about putting a piece of paper in a liquid and seeing an image come up. And there's something very
Yeah,
magical about that, but it's hugely expensive. It's slow and it's inefficient compared to what we have
yeah.
now. I would guess any student now is like, "Are you kidding? It smells in there. It's dark. Just give me the computer." Probably not. But having that very sort of hardcore technical background, it wasn't anything to move from a still camera to a moving camera, which was a film camera at that point, and then to video. It's the same tools, same way of seeing, lighting, composition, the same tools. I just had to learn how to incorporate moving and how to incorporate sound. So the way I did it was when I first started shooting video, I treated it like a still camera. I would only shoot black and white. I would only shoot locked off shots. And I really didn't care much about the sound. I would put music later. I wanted to learn how to shoot it like a still camera. Then I added color. Then I added motion. Then I thought about sound. So I kind of built it up in steps based on what I knew how to do, which was I knew how to compose an image. I didn't really know the other parts, how to bring those in, and I sort of learned that over time. And it just kind of it grew. It grew when I learned to sort of take the video camera and tell a story with it. And I started doing small independent projects, and ultimately I took those reels, those few things I had, to MTV and said, "What do you think?" And they picked me up.
That's pretty amazing. Truly, not everybody can do that. So you either had some really good connections, or I'm not sure what, but that's awesome. Now, did you see yourself at that time as a cinematographer? Did you see yourself as a writer? Did you see
Yeah.
yourself as a director or producer, or all of the above? What were you marketing yourself at the time?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I probably went to them saying I know how to shoot. I certainly wouldn't have said I'm a producer. I didn't have those chops yet, but I knew how to run a camera. And so the first job that they gave me was doing a casting reel for a new show. Go out to Memphis, it was. Go to Memphis, spend a day with this guy, see if we want to put him on the show. It wasn't too heavy in terms of the storytelling. I was terrified because it was my first job for a major network. They give me, I didn't have my own equipment at the time, so they give you sort of this little bag with I don't remember what it was, some kind of little video camera and a few accessory. You could tell it was packed by a PA who doesn't shoot. It was not packed by someone who knew what they were. The battery was dead. The lens was dirty. It was like a disaster. The microphone didn't, the plugs didn't work. I mean, it was like, I didn't know what I was doing. And I got all the way to Memphis before I realized that the gear was
Oh
like
no.
half-assed. And so, I just had to make it work. But it was okay. I felt okay. Apart from feeling like I'll probably never get hired again, I felt okay because I knew how to make a picture look like something. And the rest, I figured, would just sort of fall into place. But I definitely came in as a shooter, I would say, for sure. And the first several years there, I was just shooting shows. I was not the producer. I was not really in charge of any of that. But they very quickly, I would hear a lot of comments. "Oh, this is really unusually nice." Or, "Can you call our other shooters? And how did you get that lighting? Or how did you do this thing? Or what some other, or we need to buy new cameras. What do you think?" They sort of would tell me, like, "You're probably our best shooter. We want to put you on more and more high profile things," which led to some of the celebrity work and sort of some of that stuff, which is fine. But they really needed someone that really knew how to really make a picture look like something. It was right at that time, I think, in documentary TV making, where we were progressing from give anyone a camera, if they can just get the story in front of the lens, it'll work because it's a great story. To it really matters if they know how to shoot. We'd really rather sort of real cinematographers, but a lot of cinematographers don't have a producing background. They can shoot great, but they really need someone to sort of outline where they want the story to go. And I was right in that middle of like, I can tell a story and I can shoot, but I don't feel like I'm a producer. And it was in that middle. But that was the role then. And that turned into ultimately like, okay, we want you to basically run the whole thing. And so it just progressed.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because when I look at your resume, you really have moved through in your career all of those stages now
Yeah.
where you really have worked in you could pop into any job
Yeah.
and probably do each one, or orchestrate or figure out how to get those things done. And probably be a fixer anywhere you wanted to be.
Well, I'll tell you, the fixer's the right word. I got a
Yeah.
reputation after several years at MTV. I was the fixer.
Yeah.
So if a show was going off the rails because the producer wasn't a good producer, because maybe there was bad morale, some member of the crew was mad, or a cast member didn't want to work because they hated the director. In things happen, internal things happen, and so they'd call me up. We got a show in Texas right now. Producer's kind of losing control. No one will work for her. Whatever. We need you to go like tomorrow. Okay. And the authority I had was to do whatever I want. I can keep everybody. I can fire everybody. I can take over any job, whatever had to be done, that's what had to be done. And I would sort of come in like just real quiet. And by the way, I wasn't the crew on the ground wasn't told I was the fixer. They were told I was the new guy. So I'd come in real quiet. Oh, I'm here to shoot. Okay. Stand over here, whatever. Sure, no problem. But I'm watching and I'm finding the problem. Oh, okay. The producer talks down to the talent. That's why they don't, okay, that doesn't work. And then I would sort of pull them aside like, all right, you don't know me, but here's why I'm really here. I heard some things. I can see where there's some problems. Here's what I need. Oh, you don't want to go along with the program? Today's your last day. I'm now the producer. Take a hike politely, but I'm sorry. And I would take over shows. I would do that all the time. And that worked, actually. Having that new blood, removing whatever might have been an issue, really made a difference. We'd spend the next 3-4 weeks together, finish the show. So I did that. I did that a lot. But I think it was because of that. It's because I could pop in and be the camera op. I could be the DP. I could be the producer. I could rewrite the show. I could jump in on an edit last minute and help put like whatever needed to happen because I'd done it all. It really made me like super versatile.
How does somebody get to be in your position? I mean, a lot of people listen to our podcast who, are starting out or who are trying to figure out how to make it in this field. What advice do you give them? How do they go from, getting out of film school, just starting to get to where you are, which is you can jump in, you can fix things because you've worked in all of these different fields, and you have a roof over your head. You have, you can pay for your rent and your health insurance and your car and your cell phone and probably take care of a family. How do you make all that happen?
Yeah. I mean, in the beginning, you sort of have to take what you can get in the beginning. So you might be a classically trained DP like I was. I went to a great film school and had all this great training. And my first job was a handheld, crappy video camera on a casting reel that will never air. And that person didn't even make the show, as I learned, by the way. So kind of like a nothing, but it wasn't a nothing because it established me with them. So how do you do that? I could have said to them, all right, I'll take your crappy casting thing. This is way beneath me because I went to this fancy school and I've done whatever I've done and I'll do it, but I really want a real job. So if we could just get this out of the way and give me the real stuff, I'd appreciate it. The phone does not ring with that kind of attitude, obviously. Instead, I treated it as this is nothing to do with the casting. This kid will get or not get the show based on their own merits, and that's sort of up to them. But I can give this a little effort or a lot of effort. And so I just decided, like, as little as this is my window. I'm in the door at MTV. I'm in the building. These tapes that I'm shooting will go back to them, and the producers will see it. It will reflect on me. They will develop an opinion of me. What do I want them to think? So I shot my day with this kid, and it was pretty simple, some interviews and things. And then I just did a bunch of B-roll of Memphis because I had the time, and I didn't know if they needed it or not, but I went for it. I shot B-roll like it was my life's calling to shoot B-roll that day in Memphis. I just went for it. And I sent it into them. And the first comment from the producer I worked for at the time was, we really don't need B-roll. We don't use it on these. I'm like, oh, all that effort for nothing. And then she said, and this is some of the nicest B-roll we've ever seen. Can I put you in touch with our DP who's in Idaho shooting XYZ show, who's having trouble with his interview setups? Can you sort of give him some advice? And yeah, no problem. And I started to develop a reputation as the guy that really knew how to shoot. And then so the next call was for a 4-day thing, and then a week-long thing, and then 2 months on location, and then on and on and on. But the reputation got around very quickly. So if you're new, take whatever you can get, but treat it like it's your life's work. Treat it like it's the greatest thing they've ever asked you to do, and just knock their socks off, even if it's a tiny little thing.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm hearing from you is develop an expertise in a thing.
Yes.
Become really, really good at least one thing that you're doing, and probably something that you really, really love.
Yes.
And then do it. Do it all the time, and do it for, whatever you can, like it is your life depends on it, and do it at the top level with your best effort.
Yeah.
And eventually, your work will get noticed.
Yeah, I tell filmmakers all the time. I have people come to me. Oh, I have this idea, and this idea. I want to make this. I don't know, this doc, then this doc, then this. Okay, that's fine. So I have these ideas I'm going to put in here, and this cool thing I'm going to put in there, and I'm going to save this. No, you're not saving anything. Everything you do gets everything you have all the time. It could be a little casting reel that no one's going to see. It could be some simple little thing that you're putting together. Nothing you do doesn't deserve all of your effort because it reflects on your ability. So whether you're a writer, producer, whatever you do, there's nothing you do half-at. Well, let me just get this out of the way because I want to do bigger stuff. So no, because that's what you're going to be judged on. You'll get the bigger thing because you nailed this, and then you'll get the bigger thing from that because you nailed that. You start not nailing little steps, you don't get the bigger steps. So it all matters. It all matters. And there's nothing that I ever did, especially when I was starting out, where I didn't think big people will see this, the kinds of people who can hire me. I'm going to give us everything I had. And that always worked.
Yeah. What's interesting for me now is what you're jazzed about right now is what you're working on, and it's different. It wouldn't be what I'm expecting you to do. But let's talk about that because it's different. So tell everybody the project that you're working on, why you chose to do it, and it's got 2 tracks, right? So let's talk about both tracks.
You're talking about the propeller company.
Yeah, yeah.
So I met an individual who's kind of this like mad scientist inventor. Really interesting guy, ton of energy. He reminds me of Doc from Back to the Future, just kind of wild and crazy, and has Malcolm Gladwell hair, and he's just a sort of crazy genius, right? And we got to talking, and he says, I have this new boat propeller, and it does all these great things. The boat goes faster and farther on less fuel, and okay, that's pretty cool. You can run over a rock bed, it won't get broken. Okay, that's pretty cool. And it won't harm wildlife. And that's when what? He goes, yeah, like people will come in with their boats and they'll hit a manatee or a dolphin, and it injures these animals. And there's no real cure for it. You have a spinning blade essentially underwater. Like, of course, that's going to harm, whatever's under there. And he said, it's the problem no one's talking about because people want their boats, or maybe it's a commercial craft that needs to get out, or whatever it is, but no one wants to harm wildlife. But there's like no middle. Well, how do you prevent that? And there's been no answer for that. So his propeller can run right over an animal if it happened and not injure them. So that got my attention. Like, that's amazing. What's fascinating is that on large scale, if applied to shipping vessels, it would work on like whale populations. I didn't have any idea that we lose 20,000 whales a year to commercial shipping craft just crossing the ocean.
That's
Right? It's
crazy.
crazy. And it's kind of the big problem no one's talking about. So that gets me very interested. And if he's successful in doing this, he could really, really change the world. All the pollution that's not in the air because boats are using less fuel, all the creatures that are not getting harmed, or maybe children that are swimming in the water and you turn on the boat, I mean, scary things happen. Like, it would prevent a lot of, very unfortunate things from happening. But really, on the global scale, to save 20,000 whales a year is unbelievable. To decarbonize the ocean is unbelievable. Like, to really have a measurable effect on the global environmental impact is amazing. That's amazing. And if the boat could get there faster and products are delivered quicker and just all these things, I said, you could change the world with this product, like, for real. And we started talking about it. So he brought me on to do their media. So I'm doing all the media now for this company, their advertising media, commercial media, social, anything that's visual, I'm creating for them. And then over the top, I'm doing a feature length documentary, which will tell the story of this invention and how it's coming to market and all that. But really then looking at the shipping vessels, looking at bigger craft, how it's applied and the real world measurable effect that it has on the world, and really how this one man with his crazy idea could really, really change the world in that way. It's super, super exciting. So that's
Yeah,
kind of my latest.
it's so interesting because it's not I mean, what I see in you is a passion for storytelling for sure, and a passion for the craft. And in your life, it seems to me, you've used that in lots of different ways, however you could.
Yeah.
You've not been, you're like, okay, put me to work. Here I am. I am this like multi-use, knife. What do they call those? Like a
Swiss
Swiss
Army
Army
knife.
knife.
Yeah.
Swiss Army knife. You're a Swiss Army knife. Put me to work.
Yeah.
I'll be in any project, whatever you need. And right now, currently, you're passionate about this story, which truly is, it does sound remarkable. I grew up water skiing. And so my dad always had a boat, and those propellers are dangerous and they are super scary. They can be not rotating at all, and you can jump in and still cut
Yeah.
yourself on those propellers. So
Sure.
they really are dangerous. And I was watching on the website, the guy it can be rotating and spinning, and you can grab it with your hands and it not hurt you at all. I don't even understand how that's possible.
Yeah.
Um, so I see why you're passionate about that, and I love it that you can use your tools, to help him market and get out the word for his project. But you see the benefit of helping the environment
Yeah.
and telling the story of what's happening, to the wildlife in the ocean. So,
Yeah.
so what do you want to do with that documentary?
That's a good question. I think we decided we need to make it because this is a really, really cool story. I don't yet know where it's going to go. I mean, we're starting to put it together now. We're starting to gather footage and do our thing with it now. So I don't really know what the home's going to be yet. I'm certainly thinking about that and what would be the right place to go. But I think it's a kind of universal story that people can really, really relate to. Whether you care a lot about sort of environmental things generally or not everyone it's focused on that, but I think when you crystallize it into something so simple, like how could one invention that does basically one thing have this massive ripple effect around the world? Well, it can. Like, one person can really make that kind of difference in the world. I love that. There's a lot of brilliant people and scientists and thinkers out there, and I love spreading that message of, like, you may be one person, but you can have that kind of global impact. I love that. So hopefully our film can have global impact. His product can have global impact. I just love being able to move that needle a little bit. So I'm super excited to be part of it.
Yeah. Okay. So where can people see sort of this work? What is the website where they can go and learn about this product?
So the company's called Maelstrom Propellers. You can see a few things that I've put together already are on the site. More is coming in all the time. But we will be, through their social media and through the website, we'll be putting up clips along the way of our progress so people can follow the progress, follow the life stages of the company and of the product. And then ultimately at the end, we're going to put it together into a long form.
Yep, and we'll link the website in the bottom. Okay, so you've had all this experience through your life. I want to play a game with you if you don't mind.
Love it.
All right, you ready for this?
Yeah.
I'm going to throw questions at you, and it's going to be, I just want you to give me your first answer, right? I'm just going to throw you the question, give me a quick answer, and we'll move to the next question.
Great.
All right. What is the number one thing not to do on a set?
Oh my God, there's so many. Have a huge ego.
Hmm.
Have a huge, just don't make it about you ever, and you'll win. That's the
That's
number
a
one.
great.
It's the number one thing I see tearing productions apart is typically it's a producer or director who just thinks this whole thing is a big party to celebrate them and their ego, and no one wants to work for them. Forget it. You show up being real curious about what everyone else around you has to think and taking in ideas instead of trying to be the genius every day. You'll have a much easier production.
What is one thing a person starting out could do to further their career?
Be creating constantly. You have a tremendous advantage now with the internet. You can have your LinkedIn or I guess your LinkedIn, but your Instagram or your YouTube, whatever you have, 2-minute clips, 3-minute clips, doesn't have to be something complicated. Just constantly demonstrating capability is good. You have people like me looking for a genius drone pilot. I'll just go on YouTube drone and I'll just find someone who's just got some killer drone and
Really?
I'll call them up for a production.
Are you kidding?
That happens. Absolutely, that happens. So,
Huh.
or you might have someone, you might want a time lapse, some very unusual technical, you want like the time lapse expert, and you'll go on, Instagram, YouTube, and find some like extraordinary, really genius time lapses. And I'll call that, listen, I've got this unusual thing. I need like a very specialized person. I do that all the time. Constantly be showing. Don't keep your skills a secret. Put them out there and let people see.
Fascinating. Okay. Think about a person that really influenced you in your life. Okay. And tell me why they made a difference to you. What was it about them? What did
Um,
they?
so I shared office space with Mark Levin, the producer director, who's done a lot of movies, probably movies that you've seen, a lot of
Oh,
movies on
yeah.
HBO. Awesome. I shared space with him for years, and I think he is very inspirational to me watching him work because he's been in the business forever. Not to date him, but he's been in the business forever. But he's consistent. Every year he puts out 2 or 3 films. Every year, every year. He's just steady. He's just been in it forever. Some of his pictures have really blown up and been huge. Some have been less huge, but still notable. But just there's a consistency about that I really admire. After so many years, he's just still in it and doing his thing. It's easy to be a flash in the pan. It's easy to get one job, maybe two. That's fine. But can you be consistent? Can you stay in it and be consistent? And a lot of people can't. So I really take a lot of cues from friends of mine who have just been in it a long time. What are you doing to stay in it? And it's not so much anymore about your filmmaking skill. If you've made many films, whatever you've made, you probably are good at making films, but how do you keep getting the work? How are you dealing with your clients? How are you keeping them close? How are you not looking dated? How are you staying on the cutting edge of whatever's next? How are you keeping that attention? Just all of that kind of business management type of stuff, I think is real valuable. And he is one person I've watched carefully for years and I just admire tremendously.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Well, if you're out there listening, Mark, hats off to you for inspiring Josh here.
We love you.
Um, okay, 3 things that you tell your people when you want to set the tone on any production.
That's easy. One, give yourself multiple outs. What does that mean? In terms of shooting, if you get your main coverage, whatever your coverage is for a scene, don't okay, we're good. Pack up and leave. And then you're in the edit and you're like, man, if we just had a reverse wide shot, we could cover this whole conversation. If we just had a cutaway of this detail, of the thing they're holding in their hands, of the bird in the tree over their head, whatever it might be, there's always those little things that sometimes we get lazy and we don't get. All right, the checklist says these 4 shots, I'm done, let me go home. But you're not thinking like down the road. Think like an editor. What would the editor really need to cover this scene? We'd love some more wides, we'd love some reverse, we'd love some non-syncs, we'd love some whatever it might be. How easy is it in the moment to get those shots? Another 10 minutes? All right, crew, clear out. We're going to be here. Boom, 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 done. It's so easy. How easy is it to get 3 months later when you're in the edit another part of the world? Really, really hard. Really hard. Get it. Don't be lazy. Give yourself outs, whatever that might be. You don't think you're going to need this moment, this shot, this thing. If you can get it anyway, because you'll be glad in the edit that you have it. and you have choices, or worse, or more likely, your client will say, "Oh, can you just cut to a wide right here?" And you're like, "Oh, geez, it would have been so." I've had shoots where the main crew is, let's say, inside a building getting the scene, and just for time, I know I've gone out with my iPhone and just shot an exterior just to have it. That shot aired. My iPhone shot aired because we were going so quickly. We had to. The story progressed and then moved outside and then moved away. And we never got it on our A cam, and the iPhone shot worked. But I had the
Yeah.
thought to let's go get it. So give yourself outs. Another one that's huge is you got to motivate your team first. So you, the director, you, the writer, you, the producer, you are bleeding for your production. It's your production. You're going to give everything you have, and you should, and you will. But your PA might not have that same level of commitment, or your driver, or your grip, or whoever else you might have. Start the production the day before, week before, gather all your people. Why are you doing it? We're doing this film because why? Because we're telling this powerful story, because whatever it is, we're getting this great chance to work for so and so, or we have this great actor who we only have for 2 weeks. There's something really cool that's going on. Get them bought into the why. If they're bought into the why, they will work really, really hard because they feel personally invested. If they feel like, well, I was told to do this, I did it, so I guess I can play on my phone. eh, Not so good. You want people personally invested. That's super important. Um, and the last thing is, I always say, be interested, not interesting. So what does that mean? You're the leader. Let's say you're the director. Everyone's looking to you, right? You're sort of in charge, and it's your vision, and okay, that's great. But that shouldn't mean that it's a big ego fest. It's a big chance for you to see how cool you are, and all these people telling you every day how brilliant and genius you are. If that's happening, you've already done it wrong, by the way. You want to set a tone where you let people know that it's okay to challenge you. If I set up a shot and it doesn't make sense, if I say to my DP, tell me. If this doesn't make sense, tell me. If this lighting doesn't make sense, I want to know. If I'm rewriting something and the writers, they're like, actually, if you change that, then 3 scenes later, this will be a problem. Oh, right. Geez, of course. The attitude isn't, look how smart I am. Let me show everybody how smart I am. It should be, I'm here to I hired all these people because they're the best people at what they do. I'm here to take in their input. I already know what I think. Right? I want to know what you think. And I may or may not follow it. But the more information I'm gathering, the more the crew feels bought into the production, the more people feel heard, the more it encourages more interaction, the more new ideas I get. I don't want to ever make it about me. How can we make this better? I have definitely had first day PAs who are kind of like wandering and bumping into stuff and don't quite know. I've had them come over and look at the monitor. Hey, why is that thing in the background? It looks weird. I'm like, oh God, it's like a reflection off a car. I didn't even see it and it looks terrible. Oh my God, you're so right. Can we go and change that? And I'm like, thank you. If you see it again, I want you to watch the monitor. You see it again, you walk over and tell me. Because that's now your job to look for little stuff. Because
I had that happen once as well.
right. It's not the greatest.
Yeah.
It's the great.
And
So
yeah, you feel so like, what was I thinking? I can't even believe I didn't see that.
for sure, but
Yeah.
you can't see everything because you're one
Right.
person, right? So I don't want anyone to feel like, well, because I'm just the driver, I'm just the PA, I'm just the whatever. No, you're working here, you're part of this. There's times I don't want you maybe talking on the phone. There's certain rules, but definitely I want the input. When I say I want it, I really, really want it. I don't care who it comes from. I want it. Don't be afraid to bring it. So you as the boss really need to set a tone of I'm open and I'm available. That's a big, big one. You'll be amazed how lit up your people are when they feel like you genuinely value their input.
Yeah, for sure.
Big.
Okay. Let me ask you this one. What do you do when you're really struggling? When you don't have a project to work on,
Mm,
or when the project you're working on isn't going well,
yeah.
when you don't have the money, or the script isn't coming together, or the crew isn't getting along, or I mean, what do you do when you feel like you just want to quit?
That's always, by the way. I've never had a production where there wasn't that moment. I don't think.
Mm.
There is and I sort of, it's called the breakdown moment. I call it the breakthrough moment. Every production I've done, there's a moment where I'm in a hotel room with my producer ready to cry. I'm like, I can't believe we're here. We've been here a week. We have nothing. We have no story. This isn't working. This guy wants to quit. This maybe cast member wants to quit. Or it's raining when we're shooting the big scene. There's always a moment where I'm
Always something.
sure we have no show and no story, and the whole thing will never work again. I mean, that's really how it feels. So what do you do? I do a couple of things in that moment. First, I celebrate it because I know it's the sort of darkest before dawn idea.
Mhm.
If this is the breakdown moment, the next thing that happens will be the best thing that's ever happened on this show. And it'll be the moment where I say, now we've got a show. Because we have that moment, we definitely can build a show around that. I know that's coming. So I'm bummed and I'm excited at the same time. The number one thing for sure is not to despair, because those moments absolutely happen. I mean, I remember hearing stories of Steven Spielberg during Schindler's List, and he's just emotionally drained, and it's just you can't even imagine every day dealing with that material. And he called Robin Williams, who was a friend of his, at goofball hours, 2, 3 in the morning, and he would just have Robin Williams tell him jokes for an hour, just to let him sleep, just to lighten his mood, just to get his head out of that stuck place. And that would help him start the next day, like, okay, we're going to try this. We're going to whatever that is for you, something that breaks that stuck place. Go for a jog. If you're on set and it's every day, it's a little harder. If you're sort of thinking about a project, go out, take your dog out, go ride your bike, do something that has nothing to do with this to kind of get some ideas. But know that the stuck point is the best point, because it means that you've put everything into this way of thinking, and you're sort of filled that cup, and it's not enough. Now it's time for a new cup. You have to shift gear. What am I missing? What am I not seeing? Why do I feel stuck? Let me back up. Who can I bring in to give me fresh perspective? Can I take a day off or an hour off or whatever you're able to do? How do I just refresh the way I'm seeing the production? And once that bell goes off, you'll have the best idea ever. It'll change everything. And that's what'll send you in that new direction to really get kind of that great moment. It happens just past that stuck place. So
Interesting.
don't be afraid of it, because you'll get it. Embrace it, because it's about to get good. But you have to know how to kind of step away enough to let the fresh new ideas in and not keep feeling stuck.
Yeah, it reminds me of a book I read, which it's not going to seem to make sense, but it does make sense if you just stick with me for a second. So this book is called Mental Tennis, and it actually was a game changer for me because I played tennis all through high school and college, and I really was a very gifted tennis player physically. The problem I had was right up here. Is that if I ever messed up, all of a sudden I'm swearing at myself, and it would just spiral down, and did not go well. And that went on. As an adult, I got into adult tennis leagues, and the same stuff would happen. And I don't know, somebody recommended I read Mental Tennis. And in Mental Tennis, this one concept came to me, and the guy basically said, in a tennis match, you're going to lose a point. You're going to lose. You just have to understand you're going to lose a point or two or three or four. The whole goal is lose one less point than the person across the net. And if you accept the fact that you're going to lose points, it doesn't mean you're going to lose the game.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, you've been in this production game for a really long time, right? Enough to have this history to know it's going to happen.
Yep.
On every production, you're going to have these things that happen. I quote Ken Burns almost every single podcast because he says a producer's job, a director's job is to solve a million problems. That's your job. Your job is just to be a problem solver. And, those things are going to happen. They're going to happen on a set. They're going to happen off a set when you're not even in production. And so if you anticipate those and you realize that those things are going to happen, instead of letting it take you into the dumps, if you think like what you're just saying, it can be the springboard to the better place. And I think that you're right. I had this moment yesterday. I posted mea culpa in my Patreon of I'm in this really down place and I'm feeling so discouraged. And I went for a walk with a friend yesterday. And it really does kind of change your mentality, your thinking, your whole emotional being, and it resets your body and your mind to think creatively again or positively again
Yeah.
or something like that. I think that's incredibly good advice.
I think it's critically important. We talk about, well, don't quit, don't back down. And okay, that's fine. But don't quit doesn't mean keep doing the same thing over and over and over because it magically will work one day. I mean, it might. You have to be agile, especially as a producer. Your job is to fix problems and take in input and fix problems for sure. But also just kind of you're holding the spirit for the team. You're the one that has to always sort of keep it moving one way or another. If you start to falter, the team will feel it and they'll be like, I don't know. This feels like, and then you can see your crew on the phone, like, yeah, I might be free in a week. What do you got? No good, right? You need people to feel like someone's in charge, even when it feels like it's totally falling apart. Um, but I think if you've been around long enough, you know that it always changes. It's never going to be bad forever. I've had characters quit on shows right in the middle when I needed them for 5 more days. I've had characters die while we're shooting shows. It happens. Now what are you going to do? I mean, you can't really get that back, right? So it's like, okay, now what? It's like when Wag the Dog, and Dustin Hoffman's character keeps, this is nothing. This is not, because he's been through it and he understands that there's always a way to take whatever you have and shape it and make it work. I think if you can really believe that, you'll never panic again. If you are kind of a nervous producer and you feel like, well, there's this one way we plan and I have the schedule and it has to be and as soon as it's not that, you like fall apart. That's not good. Know that things will happen, plan for things to happen, and just have outs. Okay, if this falls apart, we'll get that. If it rains on this day, we can do that. Whatever happens. I always knew on docs, especially, I'd push my camera people hard because I had to long to 18, 20-hour days sometimes. We were filming a meth addict in Vegas
Mm.
for MTV. And she had a tough story for sure and definitely a tough life. And we get to her house in the morning and she wakes up with a vodka bottle in her hand already. She's doing meth an hour later and blowing it in my camera guy's face. Then she's drinking. Then she's out scoring drug. I mean, all of this is on the show. So definitely a tough day. And her day lasted 20 hours. The first day that I'd hired this DP, the first time we're working together, it's a 20-hour day and he's got meth smoke being blown in his face. I thought he was going to quit. And the only thing that kept me going is like, okay, if he quits, I can run camera for a few days while I get somebody else to fly into Vegas. I just had that in the back of my head. He's going to quit. Like he's not coming to work tomorrow. He's going to blow off the meth smoke and, sue me and we're done. Which he didn't actually. He's a trooper. He and I ended up doing a lot of things. But it was like I had that in my back pocket. So if I was hiring someone new and I knew it's 20-hour days and I knew I would definitely have the backup DP. Like, I might need you in 2 days. Are you available? I'll let you know tonight. I would just have that. Because what if a guy's like, dude, you're keeping me out 20 hours. I'm not sleeping. I'm not eating. Like, there's drugs. This is not me. Have a backup. Because that's, you wouldn't fault somebody for saying this is probably a little too intense. But it's good to know that there's a backup in place. Then I'm not worried. Like, if he quits, I'll shoot tomorrow and we'll be
Yeah.
fine. Fortunately, he didn't. But the having a backup for whatever you're working with, a rain delay backup, a crew delay backup, whatever it might be. If you have someone being brought in on a super tight flight and that flight could get canceled or delayed, now what are you going to do? Have a backup.
Yeah.
Just
You're
plan for your
reminding
backups.
me of my Army son, Hunter, who he says he has his primary, his secondary, his tertiary. Like, they have all of these plans laid out for everything that they're going to do,
That's right.
redundancy, redundancy, redundancy
That's right.
too.
That's right.
That's the way they function. The last question, you absolutely seem to love your work and this lifestyle, and I just want to know why. This is a crazy job. It's
Yeah.
crazy. What is it? Why do you love it so much?
Yeah. It's a good question. There's so much about it that I love, I have to say. I love that it's hard. I got to say,
Hmm.
I love that it's hard. always hard. I've been doing it a long time. I've done a lot of things. And still, every time I step up to the plate, it feels like a genuine challenge. You can climb a mountain as many times as you want, but every time you're at the bottom, you're like, God damn, look at the height of that mountain. But that's what's satisfying about it, is that it's hard. I sort of love that. I also love it's never ever the same twice. I could make the same episode of television for the same network. It's not the same twice.
Mhm.
I love that side of it. But I guess I sort of love the intersection of problem solving and creativity and like madness that is
Mhm.
the production world. It
Sure.
really it's the one of the only crafts left in the world that's still taught primarily by apprenticeship, which I love.
Right,
So
right,
it's very hands-on. It's a collaborative effort. You cannot do it on your own. So I love the
right.
team aspect of it. And I love that every single time we all have these skills. We've done this a bunch of times, but it feels fresh every single time. And there's just something exciting and renewing about that, and invigorating about that. It's never boring. I mean, it's just always something exciting.
You just kind of unstuck my head a little bit. I mean, really, truthfully, I love your answer because I hadn't thought about liking it because it's hard. But you really can take those things and flip them on their head. I mean, I do like it does feel good on the other side if you do a hard thing and you look back and you're like, I did that. It's the way it was with The Girl Who Wore Freedom. I don't know if you know this. Josh watched the movie last night. That was my very first film. I'd never made anything before.
Wow, it doesn't show.
Nothing. Nothing. I've never done a thing before. So I was like, huh, how hard can a documentary be? I mean, oh my word. A dual language, two country film with I don't know how many people, and it was insane.
Yeah,
I don't know what I was thinking. I never did anything. And so to look back and think that was Kilimanjaro, it was Mount Everest, for crying out loud.
yeah,
But while I was in it, I thought I was going to die.
right.
But you get to the other side and you're like, that was worth doing.
Yeah,
And so I'm sitting here now trying to climb a mountain and I'm ready to lay down. Well, that's not the right attitude. Get up,
yeah.
get up, climb that mountain again.
It
That is what's good.
it there's no substitute for hard work. Hard work in and of itself is just incredibly gratifying. Um, and I think about it like if you go to the gym, or I like to go to the gym. And you go in the gym and you're looking at what you're going to do. And you're like, oh my God, 50 of those and 20 of those. And up, oh my God, jeez. Oh, wow, okay. And you know it's going to be hard and you've done it before. And then you get into the middle of it and it is hard. And you're out of breath. And oh my God, I'm only halfway through. But you don't quit. So in all the years I've been doing, I've been at working out, I always start with a set, workout. I've never quit on it ever once. Never, ever. Not ever.
Mm.
By rule. I might slow down if I'm tired. I might lighten the weight if I have to. I might adjust it, but I'm absolutely getting through it, and I'm getting through it every time. It sets the mind up in a way to think whatever challenge comes, no matter how hard it is, it'll be hard. It might really suck. There's no backing away. The only way around is through. There's no
That's right.
there's no I quit. There's no I'm too tired. There's no I haven't eaten in 7 hours. There's no we got this shot already. There's no the network won't notice if this is missing. There's no the sound is fine. Don't worry about the train going by. There's none of that. You're there to do a hard thing, and you're going to do it till it's done. And the satisfaction of getting to the other side is so gratifying. It's worth all the trouble along the way, and it's worth it every single time.
Yeah.
So I if it wasn't hard, I don't think I'd be interested.
The Stoics have a saying, and I credit my son Hunter for introducing me to this saying, which is the obstacle is the way. And it
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
The obstacle is the way. And we forget that all the time. But it does make us better people. So
there's no
you have
question.
inspired me today. I have loved getting to know you. And we're going to have you back on the show. You are going to be what is known as a friend of the show. You're going to come back and teach us more for sure, because we have so much to learn from you. So
Great.
thank you for being here. Now, before we go, however, it is time for our favorite segment, which is DocuView Dèjà Vu.
Love it.
All right. So now you have brought a documentary that you would like to share with our audience.
Yeah.
What is it?
So this is such a hard decision. There's so many amazing and great docs, and I was thinking about this. I knew you'd bring it up, and do I want the most exciting or the funniest, or I was thinking which way to go because there's so many I love. But I have to say, and I know you mentioned this on a previous show. I think it's got to be "Won't You Be My Neighbor," which is the Fred Rogers
Mm.
story. And the reason for it is it partly because I love Mr. Rogers. Who doesn't? I grew up on Mr. Rogers. But even if you didn't have much of an opinion of Mr. Rogers one way or the other, the way that this film is put together is really genius. The pacing and the texture and post and just the way the story's laid, there's such a softness, there's such a respect for who he was as a person that you can feel in the way that the movie's constructed. And I would say, and it's just brilliant. I would say for certainly any editor, for anyone in the business, absolutely for any editor, watch this movie and figure out what they're doing, because it's not just an assembly of the parts of the movie that bring it together and make the movie. There is a touch. There is a very subtle feel in there from the editors and from everybody for sure. But the way that it's constructed is just so brilliant and so soft and respectful and wonderful, and it's just so good. It's so
The
satisfying to watch something
it
that's well made.
feels like the film is Mr. Rogers.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a weird thing to say, but it really does feel like it is him,
yeah,
in a weird way.
yeah,
Or the sweater that he wears. It's just so reflective of who he is
yeah.
as a person. My favorite part of that film is I love that black and white footage
Mm,
interview of him just talking about what he does and about children, and
yeah,
um, it just really is so moving to think about life and people and conflict, and
yeah.
the way that he does. We need more Mr.
We
Rogers.
definitely need more Mr. Rogers, and I think we need more filmmakers who approach their subject matter with that kind of sensitivity. Um, you can tell a perfectly fine story about Mr. Rogers in a more traditional constructee kind of way, and it would probably still work because he's great and we love him. But I think you can feel a deep respect that the filmmakers had for him in the way that they put the story together. There's just a gentleness and a wonderful softness there, which I think you make an excellent point. It's how I think about Mr. Rogers. He's supportive and gentle, and he works with kids, and it feels like that. You want to be in that space. It's just something very wonderful. If you can do that when you're putting your film together, if you can tell your story, but also really capture someone's heart with the tone and just the way that you bring them into the storytelling, you're doing something really magical. So I think
Yeah.
it's a brilliant example of all those elements really coming together really well. Just awesome movie.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. We really appreciate you sharing that with us. All right. Well, it's been great having you here. Do you think you could stay with us just for a few more minutes to do a special segment for our Patreon peeps?
Oh yeah, would love to. Love Patreon.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Well, if you're not part of our Patreon community, we'd love to invite you to join us. We are a small little group, but we are growing all the time. We are putting lots of extra content in there, like extra things with Josh, as well as all of our, documentary first interviewees. And there's just some secret stuff happening in there. So if you're not part of our Patreon, go check it out. We'd love to have you join us. So here we are. It's time to say goodbye. So thank you very much for listening to Documentary First, where we believe everybody has a story to tell, and you can be the one to tell it. Bye, everybody.